Anne Arundel County is a beautiful place. It's really a microcosm of the United States, the fourth largest jurisdiction in Maryland. We're at over 580,000 now, and we have BWI Airport. Between Baltimore and Washington in that corridor, we have 530 miles of coast right up against the Chesapeake Bay, and of course we're the capital of Maryland. People come here because it's got urban, rural, suburban. It's really a fantastic place to live.
Our award-winning park system has 130 community parks and 6 regional parks. We have 7,100 acres of recreational land, 9,100 acres of natural resource land, and park systems for everyone that lives in and outside of the county.
And Arundel County's done a good job of building our relationships with the community. That helps us make not just the critical decisions, but sound decisions, because we're hearing from a segment of everyone.
There are really two things that I think are important for a government. The first is to restore trust. That means restoring trust between people, restore trust in what local government does. And so we've created a thing called Open Arundel, where the residents can go in and look at the performance metrics for every department of county government, and they can engage as well. We do budget town halls in every district, and we make sure that everybody's voice is heard.
Thank you.
And the other is to be healthy, health and wellness for us, our loved ones, our neighbors, our communities. And so I really measure the success of what we do based on health and wellness of our residents.
In land use, we are dedicated to making life better for our residents in Anne Arundel County. Plan 2040 is the guide for the next 20 years to ensure that development is smart, green, and equitable. Smart growth is ultimately health and wellness, because having the ability to walk, development is centered around transit, preserving open space and our natural resources.
Anne Arundel County Department of Recreation and Parks' mission statement is to create opportunities to enjoy life, explore nature, and restore well-being. We have athletic programs, recreational programs, child care services. There's something there for everyone, and we make life better.
In Anne Arundel County, the Department of Health, we are here to prevent, promote, and protect the health of all people in Anne Arundel County and people who visit as well. So our Office of Health Equity and Racial Justice was established when we were looking at what was happening in our county and in the world. And what we saw was persistent disparities in health outcomes based on race, ethnicity, gender, income, and even geography. And so we declared in this county racism as a public health issue in November of 2019, and we formed this Office of Health Equity and Racial Justice to address those issues and advance them.
The Anne Arundel County Police Department was founded in 1937. The agency is very progressive. All of our police officers are fully trained wearing a body-worn camera. We have 2 professors who've come in to help us journey through the history of policing and how policing has impacted communities of color. Having conversations with a facilitator about race and equity and diversity and inclusion, just so that we better understand one another. We have our crisis intervention team where we partner a police officer with a licensed clinician. They respond to these critical calls for service where people are suffering some type of behavioral or mental health crises. So we essentially see them through to any resources that they may require, whether it be a psychologist or drug treatment for longer periods of time. So our team was named the crisis intervention team internationally. That's a huge recognition. So we're asked to go to various police departments to help establish their very own crisis intervention team. There are times where our county departments will overlap, and we have a great working relationship between, OEM and fire, Preety Emmerich. We're rendering or offering assistance to help folks through those moments.
The Office of Emergency Management coordinates the planning, response, and recovery to natural and man-made disasters. That involves a couple of steps. Number 1, in the planning process, making sure we have plans ready. Number 2, we exercise and train with our county agencies. Number 3, when it is time to respond, we activate our Emergency Operations Center. And then that's where all the county agencies come in and coordinate the response. And then the 4th step is really the recovery process. So after the response is done, there's still a lot of cleanup work. There's still a lot of community help that's needed, and making sure all the county agencies are involved. One of our newest resource is Pepper the Preparedness Pup. We really want to make sure that children understand that to be prepared is the best thing. So to teach them different situations in very simple terms.
Today we are learning about thunderstorms. Do you know what to do during a thunderstorm?
It's just the beginning steps of how to be prepared.
Another thing that we all agree on is that there should be economic opportunity for everyone. As a lifelong business person myself, I'm very aware of the fact that what we do for our residents is possible only if the business community is behind it. The businesses are our partners, and together, everything positive we do for our community is helping the quality of life that people of all ages and all income levels need and want. Those are things that we can deliver in Anne Arundel County, and that's what makes us the best place for all.
All right, well, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for watching that video. I should just note that that was produced by the International City Managers Association for their annual conference. They came in and had heard good things about what was going on in county government, and put that together. And I just thought it was a really good outline of what I think is important in county government, and just as a beginning for our budget town hall. So we are here to listen to you. This is the 6th of 7. We do one of these in each of the 7 council districts. And I'm joined by your councilwoman, Lisa Rodvian, and she will listen with me. And we do this every year. And I do this with all the council members because it's important to hear from the constituents, our shared constituents, about their budget priorities together so that we can talk about it afterwards. And I do have to say that some of the most difficult things that we do as county government only happen when people advocate for them and engage. And I can also tell you about a lot of examples, I won't tonight, of things that came up at budget town halls that did end up in the budget. So it's a worthwhile endeavor to be doing this. And I know that Councilwoman Rodvian agrees with me that community engagement is really what makes county government tick and builds trust and really a communal effort. I want to thank Councilwoman Rodvian for being with us tonight. It's been a difficult week for her. I know, having lost her father earlier in the week, and just thank you so much. We love you. We're with you, and thank you for your service. I also want to note that today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's during a week in which in your district on the Annapolis Neck Peninsula, flyers were distributed, hate flyers against people of the Jewish faith. And we still have work to do, but in this county, we spread love, not hate. And so thank you for helping us do that. So I will now turn it over to Councilwoman Rodvian. After that, we'll have a brief slide presentation that I'll do with your former county council representative from District 6, Chris Trumbauer, who is now our budget officer. And then we'll turn it over to you all for your thoughts. So Councilwoman Rodvian.
Thank you very much. I really just want to say thank you to everyone from District 6 who showed up for the event tonight. I understand we have a very large number of people participating, which I think speaks volumes about the level of citizen engagement in District 6, which is one of the things I love about Annapolis and our surrounding neighbors. So thank you for showing up. My job tonight is really just going to be, I'm sitting here with my computer. If it looks like I'm not doing anything, I'm actually furiously typing notes, taking down your comments. So, you know, when the council gets their opportunity to have their input for our input into the budget, I can be sure to be your voice. So that's my job tonight. I'm looking forward to listening to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Rodvian and County Executive Pittman. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through a little presentation. As the exec mentioned, I'm Chris Trumbauer. I am your friendly neighborhood budget officer. And we're going to go through this pretty quickly so we can get to public comments. But just to set the stage, as the county exec said, this is our 6th of 7, and these are very important to get public input before we introduce the budget. And here's where we are in the time frame. So we're circled in January there. We're not quite halfway through the budget process. As you can see, it starts for us all the way back in September. It'll culminate when we introduce the budget to the county council, and the county exec's proposed budget will get introduced on April 29th of this year. And so the council has 45 days to deliberate and amend and ultimately pass the budget. They have to do that by June 15th. And then the new budget goes into effect on July 1st, which is the start of the fiscal year. Here's where the county revenue comes from. You can see there's two big categories at the top, property taxes and income tax. Those are our two most robust sources of income, 789 million for property tax and 647 million for local income tax. And then there's various other smaller categories that are all very important, but the two big ones are property and local income tax. Here's the other side of the books on the expenditures. This is where our money goes. And the big chart there is our friends at the Board of Education. So we send about $897 million in this current year over to the Board of Education to support their programs. And then the next biggest core group is our public safety. That's police, fire, emergency management, and detention. And then we go down the list of the other core groups of government. The last three, community college, library, and the court system, those are what we call our component units. So they operate a little bit independent of county government, but we still give them a lot of funding. Over on the left, you can see it totals to about $1.8 billion. That is the total of the FY22 budget. Here's a little bit more detail on the Board of Ed spending. So 784.7 million, that's direct funding. So that's literally a giant check we send over to the board. But then there's other county funds that go to support the board's efforts. So 97 million, that's debt service. So that's essentially the interest that we pay on bonds for capital projects like new schools. 15.5 million for our school health program, that's school nurses and other support. And then school safety is our student resource officers and crossing guards. And you can see that totals up to 896.6. That's over half of our county budget when we look at recurring revenue. I'm going to turn it back over to county exec to run through some highlights of the current year budget.
So first, let's talk about fiscal discipline. The budget office is pretty conservative in the way that they budget, and that's a good thing. That is the reason why at the end of each of the 3 years that we've done budgets in our administration, we've had a surplus. And we have a AAA bond rating from one agency and a AA from the other, and we'd like to get that AA to AAA. So we're doing some things to show them that in fact, Anne Arundel County is in better fiscal condition than it has ever been in its history. So one of the things that we did was increase funding to the rainy day fund. So we've increased our revenue reserves, and we've done that again since that last budget. We're in the process, there's a council bill to do that. And we're doing that because we have the money. We've budgeted in a way that allows us to do that. The pension funds we put money into, and we've changed the way that we project the revenues on those, so it's more conservative, so it sets us up for future economic downturns, and the rating agencies love that as well. And then the third thing that is a change from the past, I would say, the last administration, is that on our capital budget, we have not gone over affordability. It was 76 million over this formula that they have that tells us how much we should be able to borrow, that it's safe to borrow. And the county has historically gone beyond that. And we've gotten that down to zero, and are also putting money up front, pay as you go, on a lot of capital projects, so that we borrow less and pay less in interest. I'm a little bit of a tightwad, my wife would say, myself, and I don't like to borrow money. So I don't like to be in debt. And so we're addressing that as best we can at the county. Next slide. Public safety, probably, I would say, the fundamental obligation of government, probably why government was invented, is to protect its people. And so our police department in particular has done an incredible job in these last few years. We've increased funding significantly, actually 31% since 2018, tell how old I am. And that's gone for increased pay to get our officers up to the average of the region, more officers, and a lot of technology to make it easier for them to do their jobs. And the result of that is that the violent crime rate in our county has actually declined 11% last year, while it was increasing in the region and the country. I know it doesn't always seem like that when you read the papers, but that's the way it is right now. The fire department has had a similar situation, and both of these, the increases were partly because past administrations had underfunded, and so we had a lot of catching up to do, and we still have work to do, both for police and fire. We accepted a federal grant allowing us to hire 50 additional firefighters. We have kept up with that. We have bought a lot of fire apparatus when we had the budget surpluses, when we had one-time money that we could spend, but we need to have enough firefighters on all those apparatuses, and we still have a ways to go to meet the national standards. We have increased the numbers of paramedics as well, and thank God that we have done that during this pandemic, because we have had huge demands on them, and it's a training process that's expensive and it takes a long time. So we're increasing that significantly. On education, we are never able to do as much as I would like to do and as much as our school system really needs, but we have added teachers to reduce classroom size. In this last budget, 35 of those. We've consistently every year added to our special ed and behavioral health staffing, as well as our English as a second language staffing. Compensation for teachers. The teachers had not gotten the back steps that they were promised since the recession. Many teachers were 8 steps behind. When you add that up over the years, it's a huge loss of income to their families. We've lost a lot of teachers as a result of that. So in the last 3 years, we addressed that and added funding to pay for back steps. And this year in their contracts, they finally got made whole so that they're getting paid what they should be getting paid. We can't make up for the lost pay that they had in past years, but at least they're back on track, and we have to continue. And the state blueprint for education is actually going to drive us to continue to pay our teachers what they're worth, and improve their working conditions. So next slide. Infrastructure. This goes to school construction as well as road construction and public safety construction, all of the public infrastructure that we were so far behind on. And this is something, and really all these issues were things that Democrats and Republicans agreed on. The question was just how to pay for it. And we did the Permanent Public Improvements Fund in our first budget that made it possible for us to get on track with our school construction and to be able to do a lot of the things, as well as in parks and recreation, to be able to do a lot of the infrastructure that we were behind on. One of the most exciting is that because we're now putting money in to incentivize the state to come in and fix the traffic bottlenecks on the state roads, we have of the top 10 scoring state road projects, 6 of them are in Anne Arundel County, and it's because we've invested in those so that we've provided the carrot to get the state to get moving on Route 2, Route 3, Central Avenue, and some others. Next slide. We created a stormwater strike team in inspections and permits, so they are doing a much better job of looking not just at the sites where the stormwater is coming off of, development sites, but looking around them and seeing the impact and holding their feet to the fire. So that's been helpful. We have still work to do. Our budget last year, we created the funding for the first Resilience Authority, and we're in the process of hiring the staff to start that. There's a resilience plan to deal with some of the public infrastructure that is likely to be underwater, certainly underwater during storm surges. The first big project is City Dock, the raising of City Dock. We're all excited about that, at least I am. And we have a greenways plan, green infrastructure plan that is to get 30% of our county protected by the year 2030. And we've added funding this year to be able to acquire and protect land. And then we're still working on our vehicle charging network to not only transfer, make it possible to do all county vehicles eventually as electric, but to service the residents' electric vehicles. And then here are some local capital projects. And I'm assuming that in the budget town hall, we always hear about capital projects people want in the budget. These are some of the ones that are in there and are underway. I won't go through all of those, but that's often what your council person's fighting for. And it's often what we hear from district by district. And we keep track by district because we want not only every district to get a piece of the pie, but we're also focusing on equity now when we're doing that. So I think that's the last one for me. Next slide. Yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris on some of these, the last slides we got.
Thanks, Mr. County Exec. So I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, hey, that's a lot of great projects in the current year budget, but what are you seeing looking forward? So for fiscal year 23, which is the upcoming budget, we're expressing cautious optimism. Revenues are so far coming back pretty good this year. The economy is doing well nationally and locally. There's still some impacts from COVID, but we're basically hoping that revenues will continue to come back even better than we projected. Stable revenue looking forward to the next fiscal year, but we're cautioning that there's inflation and other drivers that are increasing costs, and that's going to offset a lot of this increased revenue. So although the county looks good maybe with the money coming in, where things are more expensive and we'll have to spend more on the expenditure side. Fortunately, we do have a healthy fund balance, and those are dollars that are that the county has available because past revenues came back better than we expected. As the county executive mentioned, we budgeted pretty conservatively the last 2 years, and the benefit of that is when funds come back better than expected, you get to use those and deploy them in the next year's budget for one-time expenditures or into the capital budget. We also have the federal assistance dollars. We got $56 million last May from the American Rescue Plan Act that Congress passed, and we're set to get another $56 million next in this coming May. So on the expenditure side, every year there's increases that are kind of built in that we can't do much about. So our debt service increases, there's changes to our health insurance or pension contributions. We bargain with our labor groups, our employee negotiations to come up with a fair salary wages for them. And then there's the discretionary increases. So these are things that we want to do, but we're not mandated to do in the budget. So these would be things like extra funding for our component units like the community college, or how much of the Board of Education's request can we afford to support. And then of course our own county departments, they have supplemental budget requests to expand their scopes or programs or initiatives to help the residents of the county, and we want to support those when we can as well. This is a good slide. This shows Anne Arundel County property tax compared with our other jurisdictions in Maryland. There's 24 county jurisdictions in Maryland, and we're the 7th lowest. We're very proud of that. You can see that we are at $0.933 per $100 of assessed value. And most of our neighbors are well above that. In fact, just about everybody in our central Maryland region are above $1, and we're still a pretty good deal at $0.933. Even better news on the income tax side, we're the yellow bar there again. And you're right, that's the 4th lowest in the whole state. State law allows you to set a tax rate of 3.2% maximum. Many of our friends in other jurisdictions are at that max, but here in Anne Arundel, we're at about 2.8%. So the only 3 counties that have a lower income tax rate than us are very rural counties: Garrett in Western Maryland, and Talbot and Worcester on the Eastern Shore. I'm going to turn it back over to the county exec so he can talk a little bit more about those fiscal recovery funds.
So that $100 million in the CARES Act is gone, but well spent to address not only the health impacts of COVID, but also the economic impacts, both for our small businesses and our residents. But you can go online and you can look at all the detail of how that money was spent. And then the American Rescue Plan Act, we're partway through. So the first half came last May, the second half will come this coming May. And if you jump to the next slide, you can see that about half of that has gone to county operations, but things that were extra expenses caused by the pandemic. And then on the other side, health and wellness and food assistance is most of what the rest of it. And there's I'll show you here where you can go and get all the information about how that money was spent. So we do keep track of that and make it publicly available. But Open Arundel is something that I'm really proud of, because you saw it, I think, in the video at the beginning, that Anne Arundel County did not really have an open data portal for the residents to look at the performance metrics of our departments. And so we have 2 people that we hired, called them Arundel Stat, who do that. They work with the departments. They collect the information, they get it online in a way that people can see it. There's a lot of good new, always new stuff being put up on GIS maps where you can look at what's going on in your community as well. So next slide. We had, for the first 3 years of the budget, what we call the budget tool, where you could build your own budget. And I was always frustrated that it wasn't detailed enough. And maybe most people don't want detail, but the budget office has we got a lot of proposals from outside agencies to tell us to charge us a lot of money to do this, and then we had a genius in our budget office who just went and did it. And the problem right now is that it's not publicly accessible quite yet. It will be soon. They're doing some testing for security. We don't want you to be able to go in and actually change the budget. And this is linked to the budget. So Chris will show you what is about to be released that you can really dig in with.
Thanks, Mr. County Executive. So as you mentioned, this was developed by our Assistant Budget Officer, Stephen Thoreau, and it's built on a platform called Tableau. And what allows you to do is kind of click around and explore the budget. So I'm going to click on operating revenue here, and that will bring up, these are the same bars that you saw at the beginning of the show in a slightly different way, but they show all the different revenue sources. And so you can click on any of these and get a little bit more detailed. So if we wanted to go on fees for services, then you'll see all these other different categories. So you can look, we've got cable fees, we've got health department fees, even our golf course revenue. And if you hover over it, it shows how much funds and then what percentage of the total budget that is. And so you can click around and explore all of this. It's pretty neat to figure out where all of the county revenue is coming from. And then back on the other side, the expenditures, remember, this is where the funds are going. So I'll click on here, and then you can see, again, these are all our departments. And the big one up here, that's the Board of Education. I'm not going to click on that because there's really no detail. It's just a giant check we send over to them. But if we were to look at, for instance, Rec and Parks, you can click here, and it's going to show you two things. Up at the top, this is going to show the different budget objects or categories. So you can see personal services here, contractual services, supplies and materials. This is the grants that and things that they give out from the department. So that shows all the different categories. And then below here, this shows the bureaus in each department. So a bureau is how it's organized. We have a parks bureau, a recreation bureau. The golf courses are handled separately. And then over here, we kind of have the administration. So you could click on the recreation bureau, for instance, and then you get the same detail here. So you see, well, wow, look, almost all of that is personnel services. So that's the people that are doing all the work, for the recreation department. So a lot of fun you can have here if you think that this budget stuff is fun. I do. But we hope to have this live in a month or two, certainly before we get to the new budget getting introduced, and the public will then have the same access to this that we're showing you now.
So we are gonna get into the public comment, and I just want you to know that you can go to aacounty.org/yourbudget and get all this information, and you can also give us your input there if you don't feel like speaking out publicly, or you have something else you want to say after tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to your representative on the Community Engagement and Constituent Services for District 6, Vincent Molden.
Thank you, County Executive Pittman. Once again, I'm Vincent Molden, and I'm the Assistant Director for Community Engagement and Constituent Services. And I have the privilege tonight to moderate, in my opinion, the most important part of tonight's town hall, the public testimony section. So if you're participating via Zoom, you do have the option to give public testimony. How do you do that? You just simply click the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen. At that point, you will be added to the queue, and I'll call your name and you'll be given the ability to unmute yourself. Once you have that ability, you unmute yourself, you just want to check in and make sure we can hear you. You can say, hey, Vince, can you hear me? And I'll let you know we can hear you. Right now, you see the timer on your screen. This is probably the most important part. It's going to be important that you stick to that 2 minutes. Anytime you go over, you're actually taking away time from your neighbors, and we really want to hear from everyone tonight. But sometimes we get lost in our testimony, and I'm here to help remind you when you go over that time. I'll just say, can you quickly wrap up your thoughts so we can move on to the next person? And just as a reminder, both County Executive Pittman and Council Chair Ravian will not be responding to comments directly due to time, but they are in the background diligently taking notes, and they'll respond at the end of the testimony. So make sure you stick around for that. With that, let's start with Joyce Miller, and then we'll move on to Pat Faherty.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Joyce.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Joyce Miller. I'm a District 6 resident and the Vice Chair of the Anne Arundel County Public Library System. I'm also a medical librarian at Anne Arundel Medical Center. The last 22 months have been very difficult, to say the least. While our docs and nurses and tech staff at AMC have been on the front lines, library staff has also served a very vital role in protecting our community. As soon as the pandemic struck, the library staff went right into action. They developed a curbside service so that materials could be distributed. They gave out Chromebooks. They gave out Wi-Fi hotspots so that disadvantaged members of the community who don't have this technology could participate and do homework in the virtual setting. They instituted this curbside service so that all things could be distributed. As the vaccines became available, they helped the community set up appointments. They hosted the first vaccine clinic. The Discoveries at the Mall Library set up vaccines in conjunction with the Anne Arundel Medical Center to distribute vaccines. The Bush Library was the site of some of this. But the problem is that our library staff have been underpaid and are going to other places. We need your support in helping get their salaries up to fair market value. We need very much the support to support our budget, our supplemental budget, and our regular budget to pay our staff so that they don't go out of the community. We can't even get regular people from out of the community when they look at the salaries. So we need your support to help get this underway. We'd like to thank the county executive and Councilwoman Rodvian for their support of our libraries and ask all the county councilmen to help support the increase in library salaries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joyce. Up next is Pat Faherty, and then we'll move on to Rachel Myers.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Pat.
Okay. Now that the Maryland, I'm Pat Flaherty. I live on Victor Parkway in Annapolis, Maryland. Now that the Maryland State Legislature has passed the bill which sets up the Housing Trust Fund, I'm requesting that future Anne Arundel County budgets reflect the authorization in that legislation to establish the Housing Trust Special Revenue Fund to subsidize low-income and affordable housing in Anne Arundel County. This is to be funded by an increase in the real estate transfer tax on properties over $1 million. We know that many people who work in the county, including service members, teachers, police officers, firefighters, and librarians, cannot afford to live here. Many low to moderate income citizens do not have access to the available capital necessary to purchase an Anne Arundel County home. A county housing trust fund would provide many such potential home buyers with the resources to fulfill the dream of home ownership, something that is out of reach in today's market. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Up next is Rachel Myers, and then we'll move on to Alderman Dewan Gay.
How many seconds? I had about
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Rachel.
Great. Good evening. I'm Rachel Myers, the manager of Discoveries, the library at Westfield Annapolis Mall. I'd like to thank the county executive and Councilwoman Rodvian for their support of our libraries and in particular their support of Discoveries. Discoveries is a special kind of library. It's innovative, adaptable, and responsive to community needs. Last July, in response to what we heard from our customers and partners, we opened a community pantry providing diapers, wipes, and menstrual products to anyone in need. In just 6 months, we have served more than 1,300 individuals. We are grateful for the recent ARPA grant of $24,000 to support this program. I am testifying this evening in support of the library's budget, as well as to ask your support on a supplemental request. We are seeking funding to initiate a critical outreach program called the Center for Community Engagement. This program seeks to reach people in the greatest need who cannot easily get to our libraries. One of the program's main goals is to increase kindergarten readiness. And as you all know, less than half of our county's children are ready for kindergarten, and children of color fare far worse. Libraries have been teaching early literacy skills for decades inside our buildings, but this center focuses on what we can do outside. We've had good success with programs that teach parents and caregivers to become their child's first teacher and make learning fun. In fiscal year 21, nearly 47,000 people attended these programs across the library system, along with 9,000 of those at Discoveries, even during a pandemic. We believe the creation of the Center for Community Engagement can build upon our past success and impact kindergarten readiness by reaching people where they are all across our county. Additionally, the center staff could provide internet access and computer assistance, as well as partnering with other agencies to provide social services, healthcare, and other services. We've asked for $4.1 million for staff, space, and 8 vehicles to get out into the community. The library is a trusted resource, and we are eager to meet people where they are to provide what they need. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next is Alderman Dewan Gay, and then we'll move on to Jeremiah Buchanan, or Butt Buchanan, sorry.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you for the time today. Thank you to our county councilwoman, Lisa Ravian, and our county executive, Stuart Pittman, and the staff that helped organize this. Dewan Gay, alderman of Ward 6 in the city of Annapolis. And I just quickly wanted to highlight 3 budget items that I think would greatly benefit the residents of Ward 6. The first being an investment for the dredging project in Hawkins Cove, as water access, in particular for our low income communities, has been difficult to come by and access in the city of Annapolis. The Hawkins Cove project is located directly behind Eastport Terrace and Harbor House, which is a public housing community in Annapolis. And I think our residents would benefit greatly from the expanded recreational use. I'm not sure what figure has yet been proposed, but I would hope that it could be fully implemented. I'd additionally support recommendations to the budget for Robert Eads Park, which is not in Ward 6, but it is in Ward 2, which does have a significant number of underserved and vulnerable populations surrounding it. And I think they too would greatly benefit from the additional recreational resource. And lastly, I would ask that the county health department support the proposal submitted by our No Harm program as a assistance in violence interruption here in the city of Annapolis. Is critical that we get that funded so that resources can be distributed to help stop violent crime here in the city of Annapolis. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Alderman Gay. Up next is Jeremiah, and then we'll move on to Karen Smith.
Hey, Vince, you look great tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. County Councilman Stuart Pittman, Calvert County Executive Stuart Pittman, and County Councilman Lisa Rowe. Thank you so much for hosting this. I appreciate the dialogue and the transparency. I am the co-founder of the Annapolis Social League, currently moving to Peak Social because we've outgrown Annapolis. And I'm actually not here to ask for money from the budget. I'm here to give money to the budget, because what my ask is I would like to have more fields, more leagues, mostly for adults, in kickball, soccer, and other sports for the county. But I'm running into a lot of roadblocks saying that we are not allowed to rent fields from the county if it competes with a league that they already have going on, even if it's a different night, different demographic, different times. Jessica from Parks and Rec in the video that started all this, so that they want to make life better and enjoy life. We support a lot of health and wellness, especially mental health coming out of this pandemic. About 40 to 50 players every season come up to us saying, I've never lived in Annapolis or Anne Arundel County before. I love these leagues. I love meeting new people, and I want to continue to play here and meet other people. We contribute about $100,000 in food and beverage spending right in our county, but I still know a lot of leagues, a lot of adults that go to other counties, other districts to spend their money because we don't have enough offerings right now. Stuart Pittman, you said in your video that businesses are our partners. Well, I kind of feel like I'm in competition with the county right now to rent fields that are available. I don't want to push out any youth leagues. Again, I want to use the fields when they're not available. Underserved neighborhoods that have kind of fields that aren't great for their school, we're willing to go in, invest in those fields, add lights, make them artificial turf so they're available year round to the students until 7 p.m. And then we can use it on the weekends or at nights. So again, my final ask is I would just like help in accepting our money so we can add a surplus to the budget. And I'm fine going to the library. Big fan of what they've done over the last 2 years, but I know I don't have to say in that part. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And thank you to everyone who's being consistent and sticking in the 2-minute time frame. Up next is Karen Smith and Mike Shire.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Good evening. My name is Karen Smith. I'm president of the Library Foundation Board and a District 6 resident. I testify this evening in support of the library's budget and supplemental funding requests. Thank you, County Executive Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvian, for your continued support of all of our libraries. The New Bush Library, the New Bush Annapolis Library here in District 6 is stunning. But tonight I'd like to focus my remarks on what goes on inside our libraries, on our staff, and the valuable community assets that they are. 2 quick examples. From one customer, quote, "I am so grateful for the library. I was trying to resolve a problem with my insurance company. Library staff helped me navigate the websites and the forms and helped me fax it to all the right people." Another quote, "I used the library to find a job. I couldn't afford internet service, and the library staff helped me navigate websites and apply for jobs. I will be forever grateful." These life-changing interactions happen every day at our libraries. And then there are the pandemic demands that library staff have stepped up to, distributing COVID tests and masks, hosting vaccine clinics, handing out food, collecting diapers for needy families. All of this as they continue to hand out books, help people learn skills, prepare kids for kindergarten, and so much more. We ask that you please help us retain these valuable employees by enabling us to bring their salaries up to market rate. I also encourage your support of the library's request for additional staff, much needed positions. We're grateful for the books, the staff, the infrastructure the county provides, for the thousands of community donors whose dollars help make our libraries better. And with your support, these library funding requests, we can continue to together meet the needs of our growing community. Thank you for your time and your ongoing support.
Thank you, Karen. Up next, we have Mike Shire and then Laura Goldstein.
Good evening. I'm Mike Shire from the Anne Arundel County Fraternal Order of Police, representing the active and retired police officers of Anne Arundel County Police. First, I want to thank County Executive Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvin for the opportunity to speak here tonight. Our county police officers are out on the street, pandemic or not, providing unparalleled service to our communities. On a daily basis, we prove wrong the national rhetoric that attempts to vilify our police officers, as we here in Anne Arundel County work with our communities to improve the quality of life in our county, and we're thankful for the support that we receive from our community members. Over the past year, as the county executive mentioned, our honorable police officers have held back the tide of increasing crime that surrounds us and actually decreased violent crime in our county. We do this with staffing levels, which despite substantial gains are still below our neighboring comparable jurisdictions, which means that our police officers are burdened with the responsibility of performing like two or three officers from other jurisdictions. We've made great progress digging out of the hole created by previous administrations' failure to invest in public safety, but there is still more work to be done. Our officers live too close to the edge of exhaustion due to historical understaffing, and we have many facilities which are long overdue for replacement and reinvestment. For instance, our firearms range, where county law enforcement officers train on how to make legal and moral decisions about using deadly force. It's quite literally falling apart. The cost of doing business is increasing as we work to respond to our community's needs and demands by implementing and improving important programs such as our mental health programs, our body-worn camera program, and as we attempt to comply with new state mandates. These things should not be mistaken with simple spending. As the county executive calls it, this is investment in the safety and security of our communities that pays dividends in so many ways. It's vitally important that we have the support of our citizens and our elected officials in their rhetoric, their legislation, and of course, the county's budget. I'm sure everyone agrees with the county executive sentiment that public safety is the most important role of government, and our collective hope is that all of our elected officials recognize and remember the vital role that public safety continues to play in making Anne Arundel County the best place for all. We thank everybody for their support. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Up next, we have Laura Goldstein and then Nikki Lincoln.
Hello, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you, Laura.
Great. Hi, my name is Laura Goldstein, and I'm a relatively new volunteer at Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. I volunteered at shelters in Florida before moving to Annapolis, and I can honestly say that I'm really impressed with the dedication of the staff and longtime volunteers here. Everyone deeply cares about the animals and does their best to be friendly and helpful to all the people who come to the shelter. Although you've been very responsive to shelter requests made at prior budget town halls, and we're so grateful, animal care and control still has some important unmet needs. And in my opinion, a top need is for a full-time staff veterinarian. A 2018 state law says it sets minimal care standards for public animal shelters, and it requires that a veterinarian supervise the medical care of all animals at the shelter. But our shelter has never had a vet on its staff. We have animals who come in who may never had veterinary care, who have wounds or injuries, who are seniors with aging issues, or have special needs such as diabetes. And it's imperative that we can respond to the animals' needs in a timely manner, both for their own comfort and so they can be adopted as quickly as possible. The part-time veterinary position in this year's budget remains vacant because it's an hourly wage job with no benefits and possible evening and weekend hours. Vets right now are in high demand, and we just can't compete with other shelters and vet clinics that are offering these full-time positions with higher salaries and benefits. So my request tonight is to please consider funding a full-time vet. Thank you for listening and for all that you've done for animal care and control.
Thank you, Laura. At this moment, we have about 10 additional hands raised. So if you would like to participate, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Up next, we have Nikki Lincoln and then Erin Lorenz.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. So my name is Nikki Lincoln. I teach 7th grade math at Crofton Middle School, and I want to thank County Executive Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvian for taking the time to listen to those of us on the front lines in education. Thank you for the recent increase in money for educators to help us get back the steps we have lost for over 10 years now. I was one of those teachers 8 years behind. So it's a happy day to finally be on the step that I have worked hard for. While I appreciate what you've done to help educators return to some semblance of a respectable income, I must inform you that there are many teachers out there who continue to struggle because each year they're unsure if their salary will increase as much as the cost of living. Due to the lack of funding for so long, many teachers have had to put their life on hold. I know many colleagues who've put off buying a home or a more reliable automobile because they simply can't afford it. I know other colleagues who worked second jobs simply to make ends meet. The recent increase in pay will allow these educators to finally begin to catch up with their peers who've been able to purchase these homes, cars, or save for college for their children. So this is a start. But now that we're caught up, don't force us to sit at the red light longer. Consider prioritizing funding in the upcoming budget that promises a consistent wage package for educators for longer than a year. Help educators to move forward in their lives by increasing the COLA to 5% in the coming year. Educators are doing so much more today than they did in the past, especially these past few years. Show them you see and appreciate the contributions that they make to their students, to the parents of this county, and to the constituents of Anne Arundel County. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Up next, we have Erin Lorenz and then Mike.
Hello. Good evening, County Executive Pittman, Councilmember Rodvian, and thank you all for taking the time tonight to listen. My name is Erin Lorenz, and I live at Gentry Court in Annapolis, and I teach English and theater at Annapolis High School, where I have been working since 2013 after having taught for 6 years in Montgomery County. And you've heard me testify for several years now about the need to bring our county's teachers up to the appropriate step. Well, my new paycheck just hit my bank account yesterday, and I actually almost cried in happiness. I can't thank you enough for fighting for pay equity for the educators of this county. And as a new mom with a new childcare bill and a car that is definitely on its last legs, this new salary means a lot of things become easier for my family. And I am here to tell anyone listening that most of it is going right back into our local economy. But I am also here to tell you that we need to keep up the momentum. After the tumult in education over the past few years, it is imperative that this community commit to its children by fully funding the education budget, including keeping teachers' salaries on par with experience. Now that we have achieved pay equity, we can focus on decreasing class size, strengthening research-based interventions, recruiting excellent teachers, and improving our facilities. The impacts of COVID will reverberate for years to come, and we simply cannot allow our students' education to suffer any further. Fully funding the education budget is an essential part of rebuilding our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Up next, we have Mike and then Shelly Rowe.
Vince, I'm doing a sound check here. Am I coming through?
Yes, we can hear you, Mike.
All right, very good. I'm Mike Law. I'm actually a resident of Harwood, prior resident of District 6, county resident for 50 plus years. Mr. Pittman, thank you. Council Chair Vivian, thank you. And from the Lofton House, our sincerest sympathies, Lisa. For the last decade plus, I've been an advocate for increasing the public access to the Bay. And for the last 6 years, I've served as a volunteer on the county's Recreation Advisory Board. But my comments are my own. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to the employees of the Department of Recreation and Parks. I think they need to be added to the heroes list of public employees. They routinely do amazing work with inadequate resources under sometimes difficult and dangerous circumstances. This resource shortage prevents Anne Arundel residents from access to a modern recreation and park system. Listen, here comes a few numbers. According to the National Recreation and Park Association, the average operating budget for a public rec and parks program is $88 per capita. With a population of 580,000, we ought to be spending $51 million a year just to be average. The 22 operating budget is $40 million. That's 25% below the national average. On the employee side, the association's agencies average 8.2 full-time equivalents per 10,000 residents. By that standard, Anne Arundel needs 490,000 full-time employees. The 22 budget was 133. This deficiency falls hardest on residents with the fewest means. Plan 24, just adopted by the council, pledges to address important inequities. This is a big one. Be bold. Add recreation and parks to the adequate public facilities test. Surely we can aspire to be more than adequate. Add recreation and parks to the impact fee schedule and examine and replicate best practices that are all around you in neighboring jurisdictions for funding recreation and parks. I've also submitted some written comments, and I hope you'll look at those as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Up next, we have Shelly Rowe and then Leah Paley.
And can you hear me?
We can hear you, Shelly.
Well, I am Shelly Rowe, and I'm a resident of District 6. And on this cold winter night, I'm going to ask you to imagine that it is a warm May evening and you are outside at our very own Quiet Waters Park. You're there with your friends and your family on a beautiful night, and there at the amphitheater is the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra, providing the most beautiful music. And there at the front of the auditorium are kids, and they're dancing to the music and having a great time. It's a beautiful night. And you know what? It's free. It's free because of the generous support we've received from Anne Arundel County, and we are so grateful. And now imagine that, before I move on, let me say that last year, there were over 3,000 people on that hillside that night. And County Executive, we were so pleased you were able to join us. Councilwoman Rodvian, we hope that you and your colleagues can come out and be with us on the concert this coming year. But now imagine that you can't make it to that concert and you're out of luck because it's just one night. But what if the concert was both Friday and Saturday night? See, here's the thing. It cost the symphony $30,000 to put on the one concert. I mean, they're professional musicians. That's why the music is so good. We pay our maestro to put together the program to get the music, and the symphony rehearses several times for that one concert for $30,000. For an additional $10,000, we can provide the same concert on both Friday and Saturday night. A little bit of money for double the music, for double the people. What a gift to our community. And what could be better for our mental health than a concert outside in the park with our friends? And particularly after a winter like we've had with COVID again. Thank you so much for supporting us in the past, and we sincerely hope that you'll consider supporting us again this year, maybe just a little bit more, for double the concerts, for double the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelly. Up next, we have Leah Paley and then Jane Seiss.
Hi, Vince. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Leah.
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, County Executive Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvian. My name is Leah Paley, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. I'm here tonight to express our gratitude to the county for providing our organization with financial support, which enabled us to respond to the unprecedented need that the COVID-19 pandemic has created for individuals and families experiencing economic adversity. For over 30 years, our organization has provided critical services like food, emergency supplies, and other basic necessities to under-resourced residents in our county. The pandemic pushed so many of our community members deeper into financial crisis. 52% of the residents visiting our pantries in the last fiscal year had never accessed our services prior to the pandemic. And at the height of the pandemic, our member agencies were assisting 5 times the number of households each month than they did prior to the pandemic, up from 5,600 households per month to 34,000 households. To meet the demand for our services, we immediately mobilized our resources, teaming up with partner agencies, local nonprofits, and Anne Arundel County government to ensure that our under-resourced residents had access to free, healthy food. The Pantry on the Go program, an initiative in collaboration with Anne Arundel County's Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, fed over 163,000 households across 550 distributions. And an additional 25,000 senior citizen households received fresh produce bi-weekly at locations in Glen Burnie and Annapolis, thanks to our partnership with the Department of Aging and Disabilities. As a result of the global supply chain issues and local food drives coming to a halt, the ways in which we acquired the food we distributed shifted significantly last year. We had to purchase the majority of our food and other supplies. In comparison, in the previous fiscal year, we had only purchased 1%, about $185,000 worth of the food we distributed, versus last fiscal year in which we purchased 75% of the food we distributed, which was $2.93 million. Our food output increased exponentially. In FY20, we distributed 2.6 million pounds of food, and that went up to 5.8 million pounds of food in 22. With the support of the county, we purchased food totaling 2.8 million.
Has run out. Could you
Thank you.
your thoughts?
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you so much for the continued support, and we look forward to partnering with the county in FY23 to ensure that our residents have access to food and other basic necessities. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Leah. Up next, we have Jane and then Hugh Hayes.
Good evening, County Executive Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvian. I'm Jane Seiss, the Executive Director of the Anne Arundel County Literacy Council. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of our students, tutors, and staff. The Anne Arundel County Literacy Council provides free literacy, math, and ESL instruction to low-income adults in Annapolis and throughout Anne Arundel County. We are asking for your support to continue and grow our programs for some of the most vulnerable people in the county. Our students work with tutors to get a GED, find a job or a better paying job, qualify for training programs, pass the ASVAB military entrance exam, speak and understand English, become citizens, or live independently. Our services are all free, including books, laptop loans, tutoring, and assessments. Thanks to our tutoring programs, students are empowered to participate in their children's education and in our communities, improving equality fates for the next generation and helping to break the cycle of poverty. Our dedicated staff provides year-round support for hundreds of students and tutors. We rely on community support and smaller grants to operate. Through our networks of tutors and staff, the Literacy Council facilitates connection, positive influence, and possibility in Anne Arundel County. With your help, we will work with volunteers and students to make life better for so many deserving people. Thank you very much for your time and support.
Thank you, Jane. Up next, we have Hugh Hayes and then Philip Allen.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Hugh.
Hi, my name's Hugh Hayes. I live in Eastport. The number one thing I would like to see in the budget is an increase in funding for shared use paths and protected bike lanes. I've been happy to see the county make more investments in this area, like the first protected bike lane recently put in on Jennifer Road. But I'd like to see more investments and more ambitious planning in this area. Some places I would love to see a shared use path would be extending the B&A trail south all the way into Annapolis, so you don't have to ride on the shoulder of a road with cars driving by at 55 miles an hour. Along Forest Drive to Quiet Waters Park, along Riva Road connecting Annapolis High School to Parole, and along Bestgate Road and Roe Boulevard going directly into downtown Annapolis. So please, if we can increase this and maybe speed up some of the process like the South Shore Trail, I'd love to see that. Thanks for letting me share my opinion.
Thanks, Hugh. Up next is Philip Allen and then Brian Callahan. Philip, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Susan Allen and I live in Arundel on the Bay. We're fervent supporters of both the county executive and our county council member. We were shocked to hear on Monday night that the Annapolis Housing Authority is heading for receivership because of lack of funding from its usual sources. Some of those sources can be explained through the effects of the pandemic, unemployment, and other consequences. We hope that the county will respond positively, and we will do everything that we can as citizens to help it do that, to keep the public housing of Annapolis solvent and available in order to protect both the occupants and the homeless and the rest of us in our beautiful community. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Philip. Up next is Brian and then Eric Croft. Okay, Brian, I'm being told that your Zoom is out of date. So if you want to log off, update your Zoom, and then join us again, we would welcome the opportunity for you to speak. So for now, we're going to move on to Eric Croft and then Lauren Keslick.
Hello?
Hi, Eric.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I want to thank all who made this possible, and I'm going to speak on behalf of the dredging for the Hawkins Cove project. I'm a resident of Hawkins Cove. I've lived on the cove for 6 years. I'm also a registered landscape architect, so I worked on water revetment, shoreline revetment projects before, and I want to applaud this effort that the city is pushing. It's a unique opportunity to not only correct the environmental degradation that's happened over the past decades because of poor planning and development around the cove that has deposited up to 40,000 tons of sediment a year for the last 20 or 30 years. So you can imagine how much that accumulates. Most of the time, there is no water to the public dock that facilitates Harbor House. And I also want to thank Spa Creek Conservancy, who raised $2 million to mitigate the sediment. So that's the first step in erasing this environmental degradation. But this is a unique opportunity to not only improve a social justice issue, environmental degradation, as well as providing water access to the public. So thank you for your time, and I encourage this project to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Up next is Lauren, and then David Loudman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi there, my name is Lauren Keslak and I live in Annapolis. I volunteer to walk dogs at the Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control Facility and also foster animals for the shelter. I would like to start out by thanking you for holding these public budget meetings and acting on so many of our previous requests. We would also like you to consider beginning the planning stages for a large capital improvement item, a new shelter building. I'm sure you have both visited the 22-year-old existing shelter. It has floors that aren't even, drains that go to nowhere, walls that don't actually touch the floor, and a layout that even turns around experienced staff members. You can hear dogs barking in the cat gallery, which is in the, which is right next to the dog kennel. So of course it stresses the cats out. And in the intake area, where you can imagine it's already a pretty stressful environment for new animals, the cats, dogs, and other small animals ranging from guinea pigs to crayfish are all in one room together with cages up against each other until they're ready to be relocated. As a certified industrial hygienist by profession, I can also speak to the indoor air quality within the shelter. Many of the ceiling tiles are stained in the dog room as they cannot be cleaned. Signs of previous water intrusions are present, and there are likely insufficient air changes per hour. The offices where the staffs, as well as a couple of the animals sit, are either frigid or a sauna. The isolation, quarantine, and intake areas are not on separately exhausted HVAC systems, which mean this air is circulated throughout other areas of the facility. That leads me to health and safety. Disease control is a very important part of operating a shelter, and it's recommended that every room houses animals as well as food preparation areas have sinks, which we really don't. Hand sanitizers are great, but they don't protect against some of the worst pathogens that can come into a shelter, including parvoviruses. And this is just really scratching the surface of many of the improvements that a new building would solve, as well as bringing the shelter in compliance with appropriate guidelines. So thank you again for listening, and thank you again for your continued support of animal care and control.
Thank you, Lauren. Up next is David, and then Rose Tasker.
Thank you, Councilman Radovan. I want to pass along my condolences for your loss, and County Executive Pittman, thank you for having this opportunity. I want to speak tonight on behalf of the Hawkins Cove Restoration Project. I've been involved in Anne Arundel County since 2003. I'm a former member of the board of the Eastport Civic Association and also a former co-chair of Bands in the Sand, which supports the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I became involved in restoring the cove when two things happened that were really impactful for me. Number one, as part of my work with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, I organized a oyster seeding program that included underprivileged youth in Annapolis. And I learned something then that really still kind of shocks me. Many of our neediest young people in Anne Arundel County have never even been out on the water. Imagine that. Imagine how much we all enjoy the water in and around Anne Arundel County. And imagine living there and not being connected to that water in any way. Hawkins Cove is a fantastic way for needy people in our community, underserved people, to have access to the water and a connection to helping keep the bay clean. Secondly, when I undertook trying to have an oyster seeding project in Hawkins Cove, I found out that the water in that very cove is not even deep enough to support a small oyster bed. So those are two very important tie-ins to why that is an important project. And I certainly hope that the county will support it. And finally, I want to thank Eric and the residents of Hawkins Cove and the Spa Creek Conservancy for their work in stopping the sediment from running into the cove. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We have about 4 hands raised. So if you would like to participate, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Up next is Rose Tasker and then O'Brien Atkinson. Rose, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening, County Executive Pittman and Council Member Rodman. My name is Rose Tasker, Chair of the Wally H. Bates Legacy Board of Directors, and I am also a member of the Wally H. Bates class of 1965. I'm here this evening asking for continued funding to maintain our Executive Director's position for the Wally H. Bates Legacy Center. The Wally H. Bates High School Legacy Center exists today for 2 reasons. 1, to tell the story of Mr. Wally H. Bates, and 2, to support the Wally H. Bates High School that was the only school for African Americans in Anne Arundel County until 1966. The county has been publicizing his name, history, and good works since the center opened in 2006. We are so thankful for the fundings that supported our executive director. This position has helped us in so many ways. It has gave us the funds to upgrade the center, provide trainings for the senior topics of interest, sponsor Bates Legacy Campaign, Meet the Author, initiate Bates quarterly newsletter, expand and sustain grant fundings and resources. We have also, with her assistance, increased alumni membership, participated in the Maryland Day events in partnership with the Four Rivers Heritage area. We have gained partnerships with community nonprofits, sororities.
Ms. Rose, your time has concluded. Would you mind wrapping up your thoughts?
Yes, and sororities and fraternities. The purpose of my being here today is to ask that our county executive support the funding of this position as we continue to address some of the needs of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Up next, we have O'Brien Atkinson and then Lisa Airasmith.
Good evening, County Executive Pittman, Council Chairwoman Ravian. My name is O'Brien Atkinson. I'm the president of our local Fraternal Order of Police. And I just want to thank you for presenting these real budget town halls. Under prior administrations, budget town halls were nothing more than a dog and pony show. Thank you both for listening to the needs of your citizens. As you both well know, now is a challenging time to be a police officer. For our agency, it's difficult to keep experienced police officers and especially difficult to hire prospective police officers. Why would anyone want to be a police officer nowadays? I can tell you why. Because when you set aside all the negative rhetoric and look at the job our police officers do every day, it's easy to tell. Ours is a noble profession, and it can be a rewarding career. The support of our citizens and our elected officials in this county helps to set us apart from a lot of other agencies, but unfortunately, that's not enough. As pointed out by the county executive, for years, prior administrations have underinvested in the public safety of our citizens. Our county executive has been making investments in our agency, and that needs to continue. Our starting salaries will need to stay competitive with our surrounding jurisdictions. Starting salaries around us are going up, and it's important for us to be competitive and stay competitive. The number of qualified applicants for our department is dwindling. Our class sizes are shrinking, and our staffing levels are beginning to suffer. This is not much different than struggles faced by agencies across the country, but we need to do better. And with your support, we will do better. So thank you all, and thank you for your anticipated support in this budget.
Thank you, O'Brien. Up next is Lisa Arrowsmith, and then we'll move on to Brian Callahan.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Arrowsmith. I'm the chair of the Public Water Access Committee, and thank you for this opportunity to support funding for public water access for the general public in Anne Arundel County. I'd like to echo the support for the Hawkins Cove dredging project in the city of Annapolis. Residents of Annapolis are also residents of the county. This project will restore navigation, improve water quality, and deliver public water access to the doorstep of the Harbor House community. Second, I would like to speak in favor of more public boat ramps. We have 14,000 trailer boats registered in Anne Arundel County. We have public boat ramps at 6 locations. We desperately need more public boat ramps to serve our population and curb the environmental impact of them having to drive to the Eastern Shore to put boats in the water. So again, please identify the location for the next 3 public boat ramps in Anne Arundel County and expedite the first one in the next fiscal year. Third, actually, I would like to speak to the proposed rowing center in Homeport Farm Park. I am explicitly not commenting on the issue of the compliance of a rowing facility with the legalities of the Homeport Farm deed. But I do say it would overwhelm this small park and impinge on existing recreational use. Instead, the county should revisit the 2017 Water Access Commission recommendation, where a rowing club would be a cost-effective accessory use to a new public boat ramp, and identify a new mid-county boat ramp location, and then see if the rowing facility would be a cost-effective accessory use at that point, and nail down the project funding responsibilities and resources before investing county resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Up next, we have Brian and then Patrick Dinker.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, County Executive and Pittman and Councilwoman Rodvian, and my condolences to you with the loss of your father. I am holding in my hand something that the County Executive referenced, and it's a little bag of corn that has a flyer inside the bag. It's a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff, and he referenced that, and it was handed out all in my neighborhood on Tyler Avenue. I live about a block away from Hawkins Cove, and I want to commend the other speakers tonight for advocating for the dredging there, and I wanted to also advocate for that and for Robert Eads Park. Those 2 areas are silted in so bad that you can't go fishing there. You can't hardly even get your toes in the water. So I just wanted to advocate for any help the county can do to help us dredge these 2 very underserved neighborhoods. Hawkins Cove is about a block from where we had a shooting last night, and we desperately need to get as many other activities as we can to try to keep kids from getting into the violence. Anyway, thank you all for your time and appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Up next is Patrick.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I just want to thank County Executive Pittman and all you guys in county government for your incredible hard work and your fantastic public outreach. My name is Patrick Denker. I'm on the board of the Spot Creek Conservancy, and I live in Annapolis, right on Hawkins Cove. I just want to second the remarks of Alderman Gay and Eric Groff and David Loudman and Lisa and just now Brian Callahan about dredging here at Hawkins Cove. I assume some of you in county government are aware of the city of Annapolis's exciting project here at Hawkins Cove. If you're not, I hope you'll familiarize yourself with it. This project combines environmental rehabilitation and a living shoreline and a public park and access to the water for a historically underserved community, as Brian just alluded to. The crucial point is that water access is a crucial component of the project. Kayak racks, the public dock, the living shoreline that has to be washed by tidal waters, none of it works if tidal water isn't restored. After, as Eric was talking about, 50 years of urban runoff and sedimentation. Jackie Gild here in the city of Annapolis is spearheading this project, and I hope you will get in touch with her and help her in any way that you can. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Patrick. And thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts tonight and participated in our county budget process. I see no more hands raised, so that's the end of tonight's public testimony portion of the town hall. However, if you still have thoughts that you would like to share, please email them to fy23-budget-comments@aacounty.org. And now with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Council Chair Rodvian.
Thank you so much, Vincent, and thank you for moderating all of the comments from our speakers. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone for the kind words for the loss in my family. It really has been amazing to have support from the community during a really difficult time. So thank you. And I also wanted to just let you know that I took notes. I wrote down the names and the thoughts of every single person that testified tonight. And I just want to reiterate some of the things that I've heard regarding staffing in some of our key institutions in county government and our public schools, including staffing at the library, the police department, Anne Arundel County Public Schools, the need for a full-time veterinarian at Animal Care and Control. I appreciate how many folks testified on behalf of those who, are least able to access the full resources and benefits of our communities. Folks testifying in support of HACA in the city of Annapolis with respect to the financial difficulties that have resulted from COVID. Advocacy for the Affordable Housing Trust, support for our county food bank, which has done unbelievable work over the past 2 years, support for the library providing additional outreach to folks in the community who can really benefit from some of the amazing services that our public library offers. I also heard people advocate for our cultural institutions and recreation facilities. The Annapolis Symphony Orchestra. Obviously, we had a lot of folks coming in to advocate for Hawkins Cove dredging, and I also heard about Robert Eads Park, where I think there may be some similar opportunities to provide water access through dredging. I heard about recreation for adults. I heard about bike lanes and shared use paths, and I'm so appreciative because a lot of the or actually I'd say every single one of the things that folks mentioned tonight are things I'm sorry, I neglected to mention the Bates Legacy Center, which is one of my favorite gems in District 6. So every single one of the things that you mentioned tonight are things that I think are really valuable and important parts of our community and parts of District 6. And I'm great. It's wonderful to hear people tonight coming forward to advocate for them. So I'm hearing you, and I will do what I can to talk the county executive into putting those in the budget.
All right. Thanks for putting it all on me there. Okay. So yeah, thank you. I love coming to District 6 because there's a lot of life and diversity and creativity and enthusiasm, and I feel like Annapolis is the heart of our county, just like our county is the heart of the state. So thank you, everybody. I want to run through a few of the things here. You know, the libraries have been at every one of our town halls, whether it's the librarian from the local library or board members. And I always love their proposals. The kindergarten readiness is near and dear to my heart. It's a goal that we've set that we must achieve. Our opportunity gap is working on that. And I know that this Center for Community Engagement is an interesting way to get there. And we're looking at that. And I agree that particularly our lowest paid staff in the libraries is paid not enough. The Housing Trust Fund, I was glad to see that brought up. I did announce to the Affordable Housing Coalition that of our federal funds, we are setting aside $10 million to seed the Housing Trust Fund to get it going. There will be a policy discussion at some point about the real estate transfer tax, but we want to get started without delay. So we're doing that. And there'll be a lot of conversations about the best way to invest that 10 million to promote affordable housing in the county. I always love hearing from particularly our unions with police and our teachers. And we did not hear from our firefighters. They're usually here, but they as well speak up on behalf of their members and remind our residents how important their work is and how important it is to fund it. Animal care and control, I think we do need a plan B on the veterinary plan for last year. I've talked to the director there, and we'll be continuing those conversations and taking a look at future capital budgets about the facility as well. I was so glad to hear Mike Lofton praising the staff at Rec and Parks, and I know that he's not alone in doing that. And I was fascinated to hear some of the statistics that I hadn't heard before about our funding. We are expanding the footprint of our parks, and we have in the past not provided the funding to operate those parks and the staffing, and we have to do that. And that's going to be an investment worth making in the health of our residents and in our environment as well. I love the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra pitch, and I have to say to anybody who's not been to the concert in the park at Quiet Waters that it's if you've never been to a symphony and you think it's just stodgy old chamber music, it's really good entertainment. And I've never heard a conductor that was better at entertaining either. In fact, maybe he should do comedy when he's done conducting. But it was a really fun evening, and hopefully we'll figure out a way to do it twice. I think that's a great idea. The food bank, thank you for everything that you've done. It's been incredible how the food bank of Anne Arundel County has stepped up during the pandemic, and we have to continue that. We heard from a couple nonprofits, the Literacy Council. We heard from Wiley Bates. There may have been others. They are funded through the community support grants that come out of the county executive's office. It's something that had existed. It was cut by the previous administration, and we brought it back, and we've expanded the funding for it with some help from our federal partners. The deadline for applications for that for nonprofits is February 21st, so it's not too late to apply. And I've got to say that we do it because the nonprofits in this county do a lot of the work that county government could otherwise be doing, and they do it sometimes better and more efficiently and closer to the community. So when there's a good nonprofit doing good work, we want to support it, even with taxpayer dollars. So bike trails, was glad to hear about that. The support for that, not only for bike trails, but safe and separated bike paths. We just launched what we're calling Walk and Roll. I will not pantomime that title. We've made a lot of jokes about that in the office, but Walk and Roll is the master plan, the pedestrian and bike master plan for Anne Arundel County. It's 10 years old. And this summer, there's going to be a road show and community engagement to hear people's thoughts about what we need to be doing. Bike AAA is a great advocate for trails, and they've got a great plan that we're trying to keep up with. And a lot of the routes that you talked about are the ones that are actually in that plan, but please speak up during that. I was also glad to hear the support for the Housing Authority of Annapolis. And I have met with the director about their financial condition. And we need to bring our federal partners in and our state partners and the city and the county to not only deal with the short-term crisis, but also make a long-term plan that's viable and sustainable, because we can't afford to lose that institution and that housing, obviously. And then finally, Hawkins Cove. I mean, I've heard about it, read about it, a huge supporter of it. I hadn't had a proposal for county involvement. It is a policy question sometimes about whether we participate in a city parks program, because they have their own separate parks operation, but we'll look at that. The dredging, you know, we always look every year at what the state has funding for dredging, and they identify the locations that they're willing to do, and then we usually partner, but I don't know if it's on the list, but we're certainly willing to work with the city on trying to make that happen. So I'm sure there were others that I missed, but thank you for being here, and thank you for, I'll be corny and say, helping to make Anne Arundel County the best place for all. Good evening. Have a great night.